Jake, thanks very much, and thanks a lot, everyone, for coming along and making some time to see us on your Thursday evening. I feel like there's a great kind of weight of expectation on our shoulders because we are the final act of this year's Escapeverse Live. I don't know. Hopefully, that means we're the headliners, and we might get shouted out to do encores, but we'll see how we go. But we're going to have a very good discussion, I think. In some ways, it's quite fitting that we are the finale of this event because, like all good finales, we're hinting towards the future. Because what we're here to talk about is comic book careers. So this is a kind of new area that Escape Studios itself is looking into, and I think Escape is moving into comics with their new degree program, with their manga course, and lots of other things. So, this is the hint towards that future. As Jake said, my name is Mark Fuller. I'm the chief executive of Comic Book UK. If you haven't come across Comic Book UK before, we are the representative body for the UK's comic industry. We're a membership group made up of publishers that bring you titles like 2000 AD, the Beano, the Phoenix, and many, many more besides. And our kind of collective mission is to drive growth in our industry. We recognise that comics are a really important part of the wider creative industries, which are rightly being recognised as a kind of jewel in the economic crown of the UK. And we think there is an awful lot of potential, an awful lot of scope for the UK comic industry to grow. And a big part of that is going to be making sure we're supporting talent to come into the industry, both as people who are going to work for existing comic companies, but also creative entrepreneurs, people who are going to create the comic businesses, the comic companies, the comic publishers of the future. So we're really excited to be working with Escape on this. We've been working with the team there over a number of months now to help develop the comics and visual storytelling degree program, which is a big part of the sort of talent development operation we're looking at. And delighted to have this conversation this evening, where we want to really kind of unpick the factors that go into making a comic career, because I think there is a journey from being a kind of comic enthusiast, creative enthusiast, to being someone who makes a career in comics, and lots of factors to think about. So we're going to kind of pull apart all the threads this evening and hopefully shine some light on what comic careers look like. We've got a magnificent panel to do that, who bring a range of different perspectives and experiences in comics. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to briefly introduce our full panel, and then I'm going to hand over to them to take the reins and talk us through their perspectives on comic book careers. So we're going to start by hearing from Lyndon Wyatt. Lyndon's a fantastic comic artist, writer, letterer, designer. I think if you asked him to, he'd probably sweep up the office at the end of the day as well. He's a multi-talented comic pro. You will have seen his work in comics produced by companies like Blue Fox Comics and Image Comics in the US, and his own work, his own stuff that he's produced. He's run over 60 successful Kickstarters, which is incredibly impressive. If you'd have been in your local comic shop in the last week or two, you'd have seen his variant cover art on the new Image Top Cow book, the thing on the doorstep, which is a magnificently creepy new horror title. I advise you all to check out. So, Linda, look forward to hearing from you. We're going to hear from Elena Vitagliano, and Elena has the I think rare distinction of being a European manga artist who has produced work for Shonen Jump, the kind of seminal manga magazine. She originally hails from Italy. She now makes her home here in the UK, and she's a multiple award winner for her fantastic manga art, and is soon to be more regular of this parish, I think. And perhaps you're going to talk a bit about this, Elena, but Elena will be teaching on a manga course for Escape Studios in the coming months. And finally, we're going to hear from Andrew Mark Sewell. This is a shift towards the business end of comic careers, if you like, because I think much as the industry needs artists or writers, it also needs people who are going to be magnificent business development people, great marketing people, great kind of executives who are driving comic companies forward. Andrew has a storied career, I think that covers a few decades, if you don't mind me saying, Andrew.
I'm that old.
Quite in comics, but more than that, Andrew is a kind of multimedia creative dynamo. He's worked in film, TV, audio drama, and he's the founder of the company B7 Media, which produces fantastic audio dramas in particular. And from B7 Media, Andrew has spun B7 Comics, which is a an imprint that's brought us the like of the lad himself, a fantastic graphic novel biography of the radio comedian Tony Hancock, Pilgrim Secrets and Lies, a really good kind of sci-fi thriller series, and perhaps most excitingly of all is on the cusp of bringing us a series of graphic novels which are going to revitalise Dan Dare, the classic British space comic hero for a new generation. So really looking forward to hearing Andrew's perspective on a career at the business end of comics. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our first something I have forgot to mention. For those of you who may have been expecting to see Paul Duffield from the Phoenix comic here this evening, unfortunately, Paul is now unable to join us. And actually, he's asked me to relay the fact that the reason he can't join us is integral to building comic careers. So Paul is the artistic director at the Phoenix, which is a weekly children's story comic, and he can't join us because he's working to hit his deadlines for the Phoenix. Because when you're working in weekly comics or monthly comics or any kind of periodical that comes out like that, deadlines are non-negotiable. And unfortunately, Paul was a bit poorly last week, so his workload has stacked up, and he's unable to join us because he is working to hit his deadlines. And he did ask me to relay that is one of the things he would have spoken about this evening, that move from a kind of comic enthusiast to a comic professional often entails things like making sure you're hitting your deadlines. So maybe something for us to think about as we begin our discussion. But anyway, as I said, without further ado, let's hear from our panelists. And Lyndon, I'm going to ask you to come in first, if that's okay. So Lyndon, please talk to us a bit about your journey into comics and where you're sitting right now and what you've learned along the way.
Cool. So yeah, I did a degree. I did illustration for graphic novels at Glyndŵr University, which is the North Wales School of Art and Design. And that was a illustration and comics course. It's what I chose because they covered children's books, illustration, comics, concept art, animation. It gave you a real spread of the industry, which meant that when you were working on your degree, you became multidisciplined. You could do a lot of different aspects of creative work, whether that's, the writing, the artwork, lettering. And as my degree went on, I specialized into comics, which was kind of always my goal. And in my third year, I self-published two of my own comics, and I started exhibiting at events, MCMs, and the pop culture kind of shows, and started networking and getting work. And I was thankfully, as I was finishing my third year, I was unsure what I was wanting to do. A lot of people were giving me advice on going freelancing, to just go for it. And, enough people were saying, oh, we can find you a bit of work doing this, or a couple of pages here or there. So laying the groundwork before I finished my degree really helped me hit the ground running. I applied for an internship at Advocate Art. I was meant to be there for 2 weeks, and I was there for 2 months. Thankfully, they were at the time had an in-house studio, and they were doing animation, and they needed to outsource comic book artwork. So I was in kind of the right place at the right time. And I was essentially a ghost artist for 2 months. My name's not on any of the books, but I was helping with the back end of like inking and coloring. And it wasn't necessarily my art style, but I had the skills and understood like the production process that I could help out. So it was a mixture of going freelance and building my own comic work, and people seeing the potential for what my work could be. I hadn't really done horror books when I started out, but my art style is quite painterly, it's quite inky and grungy in places. And some people said, oh, you'd be really good drawing monsters. I did one book for Blue Fox Comics very early on, Hexes, and that kind of like snowballed my career. It kind of like I spent the next 3 years drawing horror books, which is a really nice position to be in. And I got my first miniseries from it, and it's just been from there doing one book to the next and getting opportunities as they come in. So sometimes I do self-publishing with Kickstarter. Sometimes I work with publishers like Blue Fox. Sometimes I'm working overseas with Image or Top Cow. So it depends on book to book. So I've kind of like in a nice space that I do a mixture of traditional comics, single issues, and books and graphic novels for the bookshelf. Yeah.
Brilliant, thanks, Lyndon. What we'll do, we'll ask the full audience to maybe pop some questions into the Q&A, which I think is at the bottom of the screen along the way. And Jake and gang, I don't know if you're able to take questions from the floor for people who are in person. And what we'll do, we'll then sort of come to the questions after all of the panelists have spoken. One immediate thing that does spring to me, that my mind though, Lyndon, I'll ask you just before we do move on to our next panelist. You kind of spoke about, when you were studying and first starting out, you sought advice. If you were the person being asked advice now by a young Lyndon, what would you tell young Lyndon? What's maybe one big piece of advice you would give yourself?
Okay. I think a lot of people give us advice if you want to get into comics. If you want to work in the industry, you have to make a comic to show people what you can do. Don't start with your big epic 3-part trilogy saga. Do something small first. You can do a 4-page comic, you do an 8-page comic, you can then do a 24-page comic, and you can build up to, the graphic novel format, which is like 100-page plus kind of thing. That you'll learn so much from doing the smaller stuff first, but also it really helps when you finish a story, when you finish something and finish a project, you can really reflect and learn from it. And yeah, if you get bogged down doing 100-page epics from the get-go, if you're really passionate about it, great, go for it. But my advice would be do a small one first. You'll learn so much from it, and then do your epics afterwards.
Brilliant. Words of wisdom. Do something you can finish.
Yes.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm sure we'll come back to you, Linda, because I can already see a few questions pinging in. But for now, let's move on to Elena. Elena, perhaps could you talk us through your journey into being the award-winning manga artist that you are?
Oh well, so I'd say my route into comics or manga/manga career wasn't a traditional one, in the sense that I didn't attend art school. So even though I had always loved drawing and telling stories, specifically in drawings format, like with drawing, for a long time I didn't believe my career in manga was truly within my reach. Honestly, Japan felt impossibly far from Italy, and almost like another world, and I didn't think I was good enough. Still, I studied art and Japanese language, at least to be close to Japan in some way, and later graphic design, which in the end it was useful in some way, although I didn't realize at the time, right? And after quite a long detour, if I can say that, I eventually returned to my first love, manga. And I was fortunate enough to meet someone who became a sort of mentor for me. She's a former Kodansha editor who lives in Italy, and Kodansha is one of the largest publishing houses in Japan. And she gave me lots of invaluable advice and helped me understand manga storytelling very deeply. Because at the beginning, as many people, I also thought, making manga was about drawing in a certain style, which is not. Spoiler alert. So after that, I started entering competitions because I really didn't know how to approach the industry. Also, that helped me to improve my skills. I participated in many, and luckily I won some of these competitions. And those wins gave me the opportunity to work with Japanese editors, learn from them, and connect with some publishing houses, included some based in Japan. And that's how my professional path really began to take shape. I've done also other things, like a little bit of self-publishing, participating into illustration contests or volunteer work that involved drawings and telling stories, these kind of things. And I think the competitions were what really helped me to find my true path.
Brilliant, thank you. And there's a few things I'm keen to pick up with both of you as we move on, actually. But one thing, particularly with you, Elena, you kind of spoke about feeling very early on that you that you weren't good enough, that you didn't have it.
Mm.
I think we all in our lives feel a little bit of imposter syndrome, don't we, from time to time. But along the way, and with the success that you've achieved, was there a moment you can look back on where you think actually that was the point when things changed, and I thought actually I can do this?
Well, there are. It was in stages, right? It took time, for me to convince myself that I could do it. So
Yeah.
probably the first real important milestone was entering Manga Jiman, which is a UK competition, national competition. And at that point, I was struggling to decide what to do, because I had a job as a graphic designer, but I was still thinking about making manga, although I didn't know how to do it. And so I don't know, I just said to myself, maybe this silly thing, like, okay, why don't you enter this competition? If you have any result, like just shortlisted or something, then maybe you can do something with this passion. Otherwise, it just has to be a hobby, and you have to grow up. You have to find a serious job. I don't know. Everybody that looks for a job in art at one point, will hear this thing. Get a serious job. What is this? What are you doing? And so I did that, and I remember that was like 8 pages, and it was very difficult for me. So this shows the level, right? But I did really put everything I had into it, and with my great surprise, I actually won first prize. I did not expect even to be considered at all, and that was something that really gave me that burst of confidence that I needed, at least to start looking into it again. This doesn't mean that if you don't win competitions, your work is not valuable. That's why I said that was a silly thing that I did, because maybe if someone else had made a more appropriate entry for that time, this would have gone differently. So this is not what I want to say, but it really helped me. So from that, I started to look around and for other competitions. I am addicted to deadlines. If I don't have a deadline, it's like I don't do anything. So
you sympathise with poor old Paul. He's been waylaid creating the Phoenix this evening.
Exactly. So you need deadlines.
It sounds like there's a common theme emerging though with yourself and Lyndon, in that a big step was, if you want to create comics, create comics. You mentioned the award was the kind of motivation, but actually what that did is it just made you start and finish your 8-page comic, and that was just having that product that you've created was a huge step. So sort of, again, something for us to explore then. Andrew, I'm going to bring you in here if that's okay, because obviously you have a very different vantage point because you're actually running a comic company.
Allegedly.
Talk us through how you've ended up doing that, and what it's like from that vantage point.
Oh my God, we have to go back quite a bit in history to the dark ages of television. No, I was working at the BBC in the 80s, so I started off in television, in programme finance. So I always remember my first interview for a job at the BBC. What do you want to do? And I said, nothing to do with figures. And I spent the next 7 years dealing with budgets and location bank accounts. But I've always been interested in comics. And whilst I was at the BBC, I was doing freelance writing. I was a film journalist for some years. And I met up with a comic book collector and specialist, a guy called Duncan McAlpine, who wrote the UK comic book price guide. And off the back of that, he said, I'm having trouble promoting this. And I said, well, I can do PR. That's easy. So I started promoting his price guide and going to the various signings of Forbidden Planet. And of course, Duncan knew everyone who was anyone in the comic book industry. So I used to just hang out at the bar and chat to everyone from Dave Gibbons and David Lloyd Alan Grant, John Wagner, and in my slight naivety, I didn't realise the greats that I was cohabiting with. But I slightly got the bug, and then I got involved in a business proposition that Duncan was involved with, Stateside Comics, which was on the retail side. And Stateside started off as a silver and golden age retailer, and they opened a store. They were online. Were they online? Can't remember, the mail order. Before online. They were mail order or the sort of cusp online, and then they wanted to expand, and so I helped them put a business plan to put concessions into the Virgin megastores. And at the time, that was we all thought we were mad because Virgin had just announced that they weren't having concessions anymore, but we made them. They conceded to having a comic book concession, and then also in Hamleys. And then off the back of that, I ended up in the States with Fred Greenberg with the Great Eastern Conventions, which are these huge conventions. That's what we now start to see here with the MCM and the comic book one in Earl's Court. But in America, obviously, everything is bigger. You've got the San Diego Convention, and you had the Great Eastern Convention, which is the biggest one on the East Coast. And I basically came on board as a general manager, creative director, and helped Fred then shape that as a more multimedia convention. And we would take over the huge convention center, which is the Jacob Javits Center. But off the back of that, I got to meet the gods of comics at the time, people like Jim Shooter, Stan Lee, and became quite pally with them and would pick their brains mercilessly. And so that was my grounding. And then I went back to TV and worked at the BBC and made films and everything. And when we set B7 Media up, well, I left the BBC 21 years ago. Although you never really truly ever leave the BBC, as I still do stuff for them. And off the back of we work with very big brands for radio, in particular, things like Isaac Asimov's I, Robot, or Ray Bradbury's Martian Chronicles, or Dan Dare. In terms of we did a massive radio series now almost 10 years ago. We did that, and Blake Seven, which I'm particularly known for. But we tried to revive that as a television series, but did do a full cast revival for audio. But the problem when you're dealing with other people's IP is that they have a habit of taking the rights away when a big movie deal comes along. And so I was getting a bit tired of that. And John Freeman, who used to be the managing editor of Marvel UK, so we've known each other for over 30 years. And you know, I have a deep drawer of projects we've got in development for film and TV or whatever. And I said, I've got this project called Pilgrim. I think this would make a fantastic comic book series. What do you reckon? And he was like, yeah, I think this is good. And this is just off the back of COVID. So I said, well, why don't we set up a comic book publishing company and start off with this? And the idea being, get that out, build an audience, and then migrate it to other media. And then it's kind of sort of blossomed from there. And we've done the Tony Hancock graphic novel. As you just alluded to, we're about to hopefully relaunch Dan Dare as a modern take with Alex de Campi writing as New York bestseller, and she's written some fantastic first book in a proposed trilogy. And Mark Laming has done Star Wars, Eden, and various. What else has Mark's done? Tons. He's very movie style, very dramatic in his style, and also working with Mike Collins, who's known as an incredible storyboard artist, but also a comic book artist with Doctor Who in 2000 AD and so forth. And Nev is Dead Ringers and Private Eye. So we do a real mix of genre, but I suppose what's different is I bring my film TV sensibility to the comic book storytelling world. So I kind of reverse engineer in terms of how we do it, but I surround myself with very experienced comic book specialists who really know their craft, because it's a very different narrative form. So that was a very long-winded way of saying how I do it to comics.
No, it was good. I mean, you dropped some huge names there, which I'm sure we all enjoyed, and we'll be picking those up for the rest of the evening.
I never drop big names.
I mean, it kind of relates to something that Elena and Lyndon spoke about as well, in terms of, working in comics, but also working in other things as well, whether it be illustration in different fields or producing kind of work that you didn't necessarily set out to work. And obviously, in your case, you've worked across multiple media, and you mentioned, early on in your career, having no interest in working in finance, but ended up having to work in finance.
Yeah.
I mean, how much do you think it's possible to have a solely comics career in this day and age, or is there something just inherent about the nature of our media now that you are going to be working in a kind of transmedia way?
I think, yeah, I mean, I think you can just specialize, but I think the media itself merges. So it's like how do you promote a comic? Well, you do that through digital media. Well, comic panels are static, but how do you do that to really get the attention of the sort of social media brigade who have got the attention span of a gnat? Well, you need moving images, so you need to know how to edit. And it's at the end of the day, it's about telling stories in whatever form it is. The continuity for me is I love telling stories, and so if a story, you identify what the best medium is to tell that story. I think the problem that a lot of people make with transmedia is they think, I'm going to create this idea and it's going to be a film, and it's going to be a book, and it's going to be a comic book, and it's going to be a video game. And it's like, no, you come up with the idea for the media that you are passionate about. Do that first and get that right. Now, that's comics, because a lot of people look at comics and go, oh, the Marvel, they've all been made into movies. I mean, there's plenty of examples of indie comics, black and white indie comics that have migrated into being movie franchises. Men in Black is a really good example of that. Or you look at something like Walking Dead, which again was an indie comic in its origin.
Ninja Turtles.
I'm sorry, Ninja. That's another great one, which made Kevin a very rich man. But then but you also look at the crossover between comics and the synergy between TV, film, and comics. I mean, it's a lot of comic book artists are storyboard artists for film and TV, and migrate back and flip between the two. So it's about telling stories, and I've always thought visually. So comics is a natural route for me to gravitate. But I don't profess to understand all the nuts and bolts and intricacies of getting a comic book right. I'm dependent on people like John Watkiss and Mark and Alex and Ed Polgardi, who work with Jim Shooter of Defiant Comics and Big Entertainment. They live and breathe comics. And I think to do comics properly, like Lyndon and Elena, it's that you have that passion, and you understand that medium, and you love that medium. Then that's you're in the right. You're doing the right gig.
Good stuff. I can see we've had a flurry of questions, which is fantastic. Please keep them coming, and we'll start running through your questions in just a moment. First of all, I'm going to exercise chair's privilege and ask the first question to the full panel to respond to, because again, it was a kind of point of consistency, I think, in all of your opening remarks. It seems that all of you, in one way or another, had a kind of lucky moment. You met someone, or you found yourself in a situation that put you in a place where you could move forward with your comics career. So my question is, do you think that success in a comics career is solely dependent to having a lucky break, or are there things you can do to maybe kind of manufacture a lucky break, to kind of make your own breaks, as it were, and not be solely reliant on things falling into place? Lyndon, I'm afraid I'm going to put you on the spot and come to you first on that one. We'll run through all of your thoughts on that.
Cool. So I think there's a number of ways you can make opportunities for yourself. One of them is, any artist, make sure you've got a portfolio, so you've got work that people can see what you can do and what you're about and what you're interested in. I think, because it's that thing of like, if you want to do children's books, you've got to show people you can do a children's book. If you want to, I don't know, draw dogs, you need to show that people you're really good at drawing dogs, in a really simplistic term. So I think setting yourself up for like when opportunities can come along, like if you went around Comic-Con and started talking to editors saying, please give me work, and they're like, okay, what have you got? What can you show me? And you're like, you don't have anything together, or you've just got like a slip of paper or a printout. It's not really enough. You need to really like put like a pitch package or something a bit more concrete. And it doesn't have to be like masses. It could be, if you're a writer, have a script together for a one issue comic with a synopsis. That's like your job done as a writer. If you're an artist, if you've got 6 to 8 pages of a story done, that can really give a flavor of what you can do. You can show a lot in 8 pages and the different skill sets. And for me, I found my business card and my bookmark, my details. I've done enough events now with selling my work that my card has been around enough that when someone's like, "Oh, I need someone to draw, I don't know, a spooky ghost or a dragon or whatever it is," or they go, "Oh, Lyndon's really good at doing that kind of stuff," or I met this guy at Comic-Con and he was really good at drawing monsters, and that's kind of the stuff that helps. Like, I tend to get things related to horror and fantasy because I draw monsters and magic. That's kind of like my wheelhouse. So I think making sure that you are doing things, drawing things you're interested in and telling stories you're interested in. And then if you've got samples of your work ready, when opportunities can come along, or you see online that someone's like looking for an anthology or whatever it is, you've got something ready to go to show people what you can do and what you're about.
Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, being ready for the opportunities when they come. Um, Elena, do you have any thoughts on that, on how you can maybe, help create moments rather than just relying on lucky breaks?
Oh yeah, yeah. I have lots of thoughts about that. So, well, I've learned that, let's say, a successful career in comics is about resilience and is about self-awareness, is about the willingness to confront your limits and overcome them, right? And it's also about how you define success, actually. It can change over time, to be honest. So I will tell you the story of when I first entered Silent Manga Audition, which is this international Japanese competition. So after the Manga Jiman, right, the one that I won in the UK, I was super excited, feeling, I can do everything. So I sent this manga there, full of enthusiasm, and nothing happened. So like no shortlist, no mention, no feedback. So basically no one cared at all, but me probably, and a few friends I bothered to pose for me. So I remember thinking, why didn't I win? So then I actually looked at the winning entries, and wow, they were amazing. I really admired them. And I had to admit that they were at a completely different level than me. And so maybe I was lucky, but I asked myself, how can I do what they're doing? What can I learn from them? Right, and this shift from why didn't I win to how can I do what they are doing, right? But with my own twist, of course, was a turning point. And I entered 4 more times this Silent Manga Audition before seeing any results, and I think it was the 7 after 7 entries, I won first prize. It took like 3 years. So that was a very formative experience for me. It shaped, also the way I think about growth and career growth specifically. So you have to learn from people who are ahead of you in certain skills, analyze the work, ask yourself good questions, right? Not negative questions. Break down what people that you admire are doing right and apply them on your work. And I also learned that if you stop trying, you remove any possibility for success. So you have to keep on trying, okay? But as I was saying, success can be different for different people. Okay, so for me, one definition of success, for example, today is being able to live from my artwork. Okay, not doing it as a second job or on the side. So that might sound kind of simple, right? But it hasn't always been possible for me. So it's actually great, and it feels quite good to be able to do that. So definitely, yeah, career success comes from being humble, learn how to learn strategically, being persistent. But yeah, also decide, it comes from deciding what is success to you, because you risk to never feel like I made it. And probably, it's always a work in progress. It's a never-ending work. But you do need to feel that you've done some steps, otherwise you get discouraged. So,
Yeah.
and then we go back to the resilient thing.
Fantastic. So resilience, perseverance, willingness and readiness to learn, and a kind of a sense of what good looks like to you, which is constantly evolving. That's it's a great way of thinking about it. Andrew, I'm going to twist the question slightly for you, if that's okay, because you sit in a slightly different place. So, as someone who runs a comic company, someone who is publishing comics, someone who is looking for talent to work on your comics that you put out, what are the steps that you feel people can take to kind of be in the right place for you to, you sort of not only to discover them, but be ready to support them and incorporate their work into your publishing program?
I think it's slightly different for us because in terms of the makeup of what we are as an indie comic book publisher, so we tend to go immediately for well-established artists because we want to make statement stories. So it's not, we haven't really got an environment whereby we can test out new talent. But in terms of, if I think back to Mark Laming, for example, so I first met Mark when he worked for Stateside in retail as a shop assistant. And then he showed me his portfolio and I was like, wow, you can really draw. But that journey for him, he spent a long time working in comic book stores, but he immersed himself in that world. He was passionate about it. And he went to comic conventions with his portfolio. He met up with people he showed. He also knew what his speciality was, what his genre was. Rather like Lyndon says, do dragons and magic. That's what you're good at. Focus on what you're good at and become excellent at that, because that becomes your calling card. It's like what we've done in our production. We're known for our science fiction and fantasy. Yes, we've diversified from that, but we always ultimately come back in some way to what is our core love and what we're known for. But yeah, it's build a portfolio up. It's again, it's what Elena said. It's you will get knocked down. You will get discouraged. You have got tenacity. You've got to have that tenacity. You've got to be somewhat bloody minded about it to keep going. But also immerse yourself in that comic book world and understand and absorb how different people approach the storytelling, and go to conventions, talk to artists and writers that have made it, learn from their experiences, and if you got what it takes, then hopefully you'll better edge your way into the industry. It's not easy. It's one of the most competitive and hard industries, hardest industries to break into. It was back in the 80s and 90s in a way. It's now even harder because of the commercial landscape, because comics, when I was a kid growing up, I'd walk into a newsagent and there'd be racks of comics. Have tons of anthology comics from TV Action and Countdown and so forth. Now you're lucky if you can find any, and they'll be right at the back of the store. So and specialist stores that focus wholly on graphic novels and comics. It's a tough environment for them, especially off the back of COVID. Quite a few went to the wall. You're trying to, and that's where Kickstarter has actually helped. A lot of people coming in who haven't been able to break into the publishers have gone, well, screw this. We'll do it ourselves, and we'll build up a community who likes our work, and hopefully we'll get enough funding that we can publish, a 3 or 4 part series and grow from there. It's about building your portfolio and making yourself known.